One of the biggest things for virtual audiences that's harder to do virtually than it is to do in person is to keep people engaged. Hey everyone, what's up? Devon Brown here, and in this video I'm going to share with you 10 tips for successfully hosting your next virtual event. So if you're watching this video, in all likelihood you've been invited to MC or host a virtual event. And so the question is, what are the tips that you need to know so that you can knock it out of the park when you go to host that virtual event? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this video. And in case you're not familiar with me or who I am, hi, my name is Devon Brown. I have been hosting and emceeing events since around 2005 or 2006. I've gotten to be on some of the biggest stages in the world, both in person and virtually. And today I'm gonna share with you some of my best tips that have really, been solidified over the last few years from a virtual perspective, because as we all know, the world went through a lot of stuff in 2020, and it's not that virtual events, virtual conferences, virtual seminars didn't exist before 2020, but given what happened in 2020, now virtual events really exist, right? Like virtual events are a thing now, and they're not going anywhere. So if you've been invited to host or MC a virtual event, how do you make the most of it? Well, I'm gonna give you 10 tips to help you do just that. And with that, let's jump into them. All right, so tip number 1 is I want you to prepare the same way as you would if you were hosting an in-person event. Now, some of you watching this may have hosted an in-person event before, maybe you haven't, but here's the point. Whenever I'm going to host an in-person event, there's certain ways that I prepare. I show up early. I do my homework on the event. I learn about the audience. I learn about the culture. I show up early and do my sound check. I make sure everything is working. That same mentality of preparing the same way and doing my homework, that same mentality that I have when I do an in-person event, I bring that to virtual events. And this is one of those tips that go without saying, but it really is the mark of a true professional that you've prepared and you've done your homework. Just because the event is happening at your computer doesn't mean you don't need to dress right or make sure your lighting is right or don't test your microphone. You need to do all of that stuff, and you need to prepare like a professional and prepare the same way you would if you were doing an in-person event. So that is tip number 1. Prepare professionally the same way you would as if you were doing in person. Tip number 2, and this is a big one for virtual. Remember, you're talking to a person. Let me explain what I mean by that. Now, when I go to host or MC an in-person event, I can be hosting or emceeing an event for 3 or 4 or even 5,000 people. And when I'm on stage and everybody's in the same room and there are 5,000 people in a room and my voice has to carry all the way to the back, hundreds of feet away, and everybody's sitting next to everybody and everybody's standing up and you can feel the energy in the room, right? The way that I behave and respond and speak in that environment cannot necessarily be the same as I do when I'm speaking virtually, and here's why. Because when I'm on a stage in person, I'm speaking to 5,000 people. But when I'm speaking virtually to 5,000 people, I'm speaking to 5,001 persons who are sitting in front of their computer by themselves. And I want you to remember that. So even this YouTube video, this video will be seen by maybe hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people. I have no earthly idea. But right now, I'm talking to you. So remember, when you're hosting virtually, your job is to connect and have a conversation with that one person who is watching you on the screen right now. So remember, have a conversation and talk to one person. You're talking to a person. Tip number 3, get your virtual audience engaged early by asking them to participate. Now, one of the biggest things for virtual audiences that's harder to do virtually than it is to do in person is to keep people engaged. right? Because if I'm here virtually, then I can just get up and go to the bathroom and, go check my Facebook and yada, yada, yada. If it's an in-person event, you can't really, it's harder for the audience to do that, right? And so what you want to do as the host or as the MC is you want to get them engaged early, and you want to make sure that they're participating. And some of the ways you do that is you ask them to turn on their camera, right? So some of the virtual events I host, I'm in a studio or I'm in an environment where everybody will have their camera on, and I can talk to people individually and I can see what people are doing. Now, sometimes I'll do a virtual event where I can't see any of the cameras, and that's okay, and that's a different story. But some of the events that I do and some of the events that you will likely do, you'll be able to see people's cameras. And so what you want to do is you want to get them engaged early. The ways you do that is you say things like, hey, everybody, turn on your camera, give me a hi, give me a wave. Or you say, give me a 1 in the chat, or type such and such in the chat if you're excited to be here, right? What you want to do is you want to train the behavior that you want. If you want them to engage, then train them to be engaged and do it early on, because the more you do it early on, the more likely they are to continue doing it throughout the event. All right, so tip number 3, get them engaged early by asking them to participate. That can be turning on the camera or typing something in the chat or whatever. All right, tip number 4, very important for virtual events. Use your opening remarks wisely, right? Like I said in the last tip, one of the tricks to being a good virtual event host or MC is getting the audience to stick with you for the entire amount of time, getting the audience to engage fully. It's harder to do virtually than it is in person. And so your opening remarks, when you have everybody's attention, are a wonderful time to make sure that they stay engaged. And the way you do that is by using your opening remarks wisely. Some of the things that I do when I'm giving my opening remarks is I'll tell the audience what's in it for them. I'll be like, all right, here's what's coming up. Are you excited about that? Let me know in the chat, right? I'll tell them what's coming up so that they can get excited about it, so that they'll want to stick with me. Or during my opening remarks, I'll have them remove distractions. I'll say things like, hey, make sure you turn off your cell phone, put it on silent, right? Shut the door, remove all distractions, be here with us for the rest of the day or for the rest of the event, right? Because nothing is more important than you being here right now, because we're gonna be changing your life, right? Or I'll say, hey, I'm keeping an eye out and I wanna see who's engaged, because whoever is engaged, I've got a giveaway coming later. I'm gonna be giving away a free MacBook Pro or whatever. Maybe you're not giving that away, but you get that idea. If right off the bat, while I've got their attention, I say I'm gonna be giving something away later, then now they're incentivized to stick with me. And so tip number 4 is to use your opening remarks wisely. And what I mean by that is to use your opening remarks to get them excited and to want to stick with you for the rest of the event. All right, almost halfway through. Tip number 5 for being an awesome virtual event host or MC is to use bulleted notes with large font. Use bulleted notes with large font. As a matter of fact, that's what I'm doing in this video. Whenever you've got notes for yourself, do not write out the notes in full. You want to use bullet points and large fonts. Like right now, what you cannot see is that on my computer screen are bullet points, so that I know and remember the major points I want to hit. But I'm not writing everything out and reading it verbatim like this. And the reason I'm not doing that is because if I do that, then I lose my connection to you. And so one of the things you really want to do virtually is you want to make sure that you're looking at the camera, you're looking in the camera, right? And so that you can connect with people as best you can and keep that connection with them. And one of the best ways to do that and not lose your place and not lose what you have to say is use really big font, right? And use bullet points so that you remember everything you have to say without having to read all of your little notes like that, all right? So tip number 6, this is an important one, reward good behavior. And this is especially true when you're doing an event where you can see people and their Zoom and their cameras on and stuff like that. Whenever you see somebody, especially virtually, doing a behavior that you want them to do, reward them in front of everybody. So very often when I'm emceeing or hosting virtual events, I'll be able to see the people's pictures and I'll have their name underneath it, because that's how Zoom is often set up, or whatever video conferencing software we're using, right? So if I see that Mary Smith has had her camera on the whole time and that she's taking notes, I will literally say, hey, Mary Smith, Mary, give me a wave in the camera. Mary, I see that you have had your camera on and been at your desk the entire time. Mary, can I just give you a round of, can we all give Mary a round of applause? Mary is doing the behavior I want, and so I'm going to reward that, right? So yeah, in one hand, I can ask people to turn on their cameras. On the other hand, I can reward Mary, which is gonna wanna make other people do what Mary is doing, okay? So always reward good behavior. That is tip number 6. All right, tip number 7 for being an awesome virtual event host or MC is to make sure you talk to your tech team beforehand, right? Make sure you talk to your tech team beforehand. This has a little bit even to do with what I said for the very first tip, right? Which was prepare the same way you would for in-person, or for virtual the same way you would in person. Some of the events that I do, I will fly into a studio and there will be a tech team running everything. Some events you might do might be you sitting at your computer running a Zoom, right? But if there are other technical people involved, then what you want to do is make sure that you're all on the same page. For example, one of the things that happened at one of the events that I went to, a virtual event that I went to in a studio, is that me and one of the tech guys was not on the same page, and I was expecting walk-on music, and he did not know to play walk-on music. And so now it looks awkward because we did not talk beforehand, right? So things like, hey, are you gonna play me on? How long are you gonna play the walk-on music? Are you gonna play it off? One of the events that I do, whenever I finish, they need me to pause and hold it until they fade out the camera. So I talk to the tech team about that beforehand so that I can make sure I don't run off the stage and leave an empty stage, right? Before they finished with me. Or if you've ever been in a studio with multiple cameras, then sometimes what'll happen is that you'll see a camera with a red light and a green light. And everybody will always wanna look at the green light, but usually you want to look at the red light. Industry standard is that you look at the red light. And so I see it all the time where people will come into studio and they'll stare at the green light and they'll be looking like this, right? While the camera's actually right here, the red light camera's here. So make sure you talk to your tech team beforehand to work out any of those little bugs, all right? So that was tip number 7. Tip number 8, have filler material ready. Now this is one of those, again, that's important for in-person or virtual. But in virtual, when we're always relying on technology, you always wanna make sure that as the host or the MC, you are ready to stall for time or fill time gaps in a number of ways. And we can do that with audience participation. We can do that with you having stories where you asking for the audience for their biggest takeaway, or you telling a story. I was doing an event in person, or excuse me, I was doing an event virtually one time in a studio, and the speaker, his slides were not working. And so the tech team, the AV team, was just working feverishly to get these slides working so that they could broadcast it out to all of the hundreds of people who were watching us. But in the meantime, me, Devon, had to stand on stage and fill time and not make it look like I was filling time. Like not say, hey guys, I'm here filling time. So the way I did that, the way I prepared for that was by having filler material. And I could say to the audience, how many of you guys are enjoying this? Great, what was your biggest takeaway? I remember when so-and-so speaker said such and such, or let me tell you a story that has to do with this event or something, just something, filler material that you can use to fill time, because tech issues will happen, and the mark of a great MC, whether in person or virtual, is that you are able to fill time. All right, cool, that was number 8. Tip number 9 to being a great virtual host or MC is to keep reminding the audience of the housekeeping. Again, especially for virtual, constant engagement is important. So normally at the beginning of the event, you'll go over some housekeeping with the audience. You'll say things like, here's how to ask questions in the chat, or here's how to raise your hand in the chat, or here's how to participate in a poll that we're doing, or here's how to get started in the program, click the link in such and such, right? Or here's where the recordings will be. All of those stuff fall under housekeeping. And one of the things that you always want to do at virtual events is you want to keep reminding the audience of the housekeeping, because more so at virtual events, somebody got up and went to the bathroom when you weren't looking or when so-and-so was speaking. And so by constantly reminding them of that stuff, you get more engagement throughout the course of the event. I hope that makes sense. And we made it to the end. Tip number 10 for being an amazing virtual event host or MC, have fun. Just have fun, right? Smiles and being happy, they're infectious even through the computer camera, right? They're infectious. Like, you can feel me right now. If I'm making this video and I'm like, tip number 8, blah, 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 blah. But if I'm like, tip number 8, yada, 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 then, right, you can feel me. So my point is, have fun. Have fun, because the more fun you have, the more fun your audience will have, even if they're watching from halfway around the world. Energy is infectious, even through the internet. Remember that. Have fun and your audience will love you. So those are 10 of my best tips for you to become a really awesome and a really successful virtual event host or MC. I hope you absolutely crush your upcoming event. If this video was helpful, give it a like, leave a comment, check out the description underneath the video. I've got more tips and trainings on hosting and emceeing and public speaking. And if you have a virtual event coming up, I want to know how you did. Leave it in the comment section below and let me know how you did. That's all I got. Have a great day. Bye. Hey, Devon here. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and connect with me on social media. And if you enjoyed this content, be sure to share it with your friends.